All rise. The Everything Lydia show is now in session. Lydia the lawyer presiding.
Please be seated, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Lydia show. I'm excited to have two prominent figures from our community joining us here today. The first thing on the calendar, we will be discussing A-Rod, drug testing, and the entire scandal surrounding Major League Baseball. And the second matter on the calendar will be, oh, I switched those around. The first, all righty, that's the second matter on the calendar. The first matter will be actually divorce, and what can individuals do to prevent the dissipation of assets during a divorce. So that's the first matter. Second matter will be A-Rod. Now, to join me today, my first guest is a very special man, someone I work as counsel to. The first segment is Ask Lydia the Lawyer segment. And this gentleman has been practicing law for over 43 years. And yes, he has a gray beard to show it. He received his Juris Doctor from Brooklyn Law School and an LLM in corporate law and commercial law from NYU University. And he handles so many different types of cases that I think it's most efficient to say he does not do personal injury. So joining me today is my very dear friend and guest, Stephen Stern. Hello, hello, Stephen. Here he comes. Hello. Give me a hug. Mwah.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand, repeat after me.
Oh, yeah, right here.
Thank you. Do you promise to be as informative and funny as possible and to help make the Lydia show an internet sensation?
I promise to be as funny and informative, as opposed to as informative and funny, but yes, we'll make this fun.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Come on, here we go. Well, that was a great introduction. I messed up my calendar already on the first try, right?
Well, that's why you are a practicing judge as opposed to a judge on the bench at the current
That's
time.
right, that's right. Well, the first thing that I want to discuss with you is a topic that I wish I could say, I wish I had $1 for every time someone asked me. I'm thinking about a divorce or starting a divorce proceeding, or I'm in a divorce proceeding. What can I do to prevent marital assets from being dissipated or wasted or something along those lines? Now I know that you've been doing this for a long time, so you're the perfect guest. And what do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
You know, it's an interesting question, but not a difficult question. Any kind of a litigation, a divorce is a litigation of sorts, of course, which is contested or adversarial, necessarily carries with it certain elements. The most important element is to be sure that you get counsel before a litigation is commenced. Consequently, it likewise applies to a divorce situation. Mm-hmm. You don't go to a lawyer to be curative, you go
Right.
to a lawyer to be preventative,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in a situation where there's a marital discord which will result in a potential divorce situation.
Mm-hmm.
The person, being the husband or the wife, both should have counsel from competent counsel to explain to them what their rights are, what they should or shouldn't be doing, and each one of these matters is truly a case-by-case situation.
Well, let me just interrupt you by asking, I think the first question then is, when does someone go to a lawyer? When? What would you say would be the best advice you can give to someone that they're thinking about getting a divorce, they've already told their spouse, they haven't told their spouse? What would you say?
That too is a simple question, but it has a lot of complexities to it.
Yeah.
You know, each person is a different person, and each person being a different person will recognize a situation differently from different perspectives and different times than other people. Some will say, gee, this is just not working, maybe I can make it work, and then get served with papers. Someone will say, this is not working, I'm not sure this is not working, but at least let me find out what my rights are. It's really sort of how the person feels and how the person wants to address the situation. My personal suggestion would be when you...
Not advice, just your person. Never give advice.
This is not never give advice unless you're getting paid for it.
Unless you're getting paid, that's right.
My suggestion, my urgence, if you will, or urging to any person who is in a situation that is in a discord, where they're not getting along, where they're even thinking, it's the wildest imagination, gee, I really should be getting a divorce, you should get counsel.
Right.
You should just, you know what you're doing, you know what your rights are, you know what you should say, you know what you should do, you know what actions you should or shouldn't take, and have it, so to speak, in your bucket.
Mm-hmm.
And you can leave the bucket at home or carry it around with you as you see fit, but have that bucket and know that if something untoward, really untoward happens, you've got the bucket that you can rely upon.
Okay, so number one, be honest with yourself. Recognize when, right, the situation is beyond repair, right? Second thing you had mentioned before is to prevent a disaster from actually happening. And as you can see here, stay ahead of the curve, correct?
Yeah, that's the most important thing actually in life, is to stay ahead of the curve.
Okay.
This way, nothing untoward or unexpected occurs. You know, sometimes you don't wait till it's beyond repair. Sometimes you got to wait, or know rather, that it may be beyond repair, and get ahead of it.
Okay.
Because if you wait till it's beyond repair, it's like too late maybe.
Right.
So you should.
So this should be amended. It should say, is possibly beyond repair,
you know.
or heading towards.
Well, you can feel it in your head and your
Yes.
heart. What is your head?
Okay.
What are your head and your heart telling you?
Right. Even, I would think that even just an individual who is just on the fence, not sure.
Sure.
They're just not sure, just to sit down, get that counseling, find out, again, we're going to go to the next part, but just find out what the law is.
Yeah.
What the law is, what your rights are.
What are your rights?
Yes.
In any situation, be
Yeah.
it a business, be it a divorce, be it a personal injury situation, know what your rights are.
Right.
Know what you can, cannot do, what you should or shouldn't do. If you don't know that, then it's like the blind leading the blind. And
Right.
that's what lawyers are there for, good or bad or indifferent.
Right. The last thing, I'm going to give you your crib notes. Full and accurate disclosure of all assets.
Yeah, you know, if you think the situation is such that there's a hint of a divorce, or you smell a divorce, you don't want to find yourself in a situation where, as a husband or a wife, depending upon who it is, there can be, your word, as you began your show, a dissipation of the assets, which would result in a situation where you don't get what I'll call your fair share, so to speak. You need to be certain that you know what assets there are of the marital domain, if you will, a house, a bank account, whatever it may be, and know that you've got that list.
Right.
And when you seek the advice that very first time, the counsel, not to get the divorce, but how to consider what your rights might be, you should have that piece of paper. And then you'll know if perchance the situation becomes such that it deteriorates beyond repair, or close to beyond repair. You've got that initial list, and when it isn't there, when you're there, at the point where you really need the counsel and the lawyering, you've got something as a yardstick or a milestone to go from, and you can sort of really know where to go.
So I think that what you're saying is not only is it going to help prevent the dissipation of assets just by identifying what there is, but also I think it's more efficient in terms of cost, in terms of time,
Sure.
in terms of everything. You don't want to show up necessarily at your at an attorney's office because you may go to more than one. Although if they go to you, that's it. They're done.
If they go to me, they may never come back. But the fact of the matter is that, you know,
Efficiency.
it's efficiency, and it's proficient. You know, it's proactive more than anything else. If you're reactive, you're going to find yourself behind the curve.
Right.
If you're proactive, you will be ahead of the curve.
Right.
And part of that, of course, necessarily requires full and complete disclosure to whomever you go to as a lawyer, so that that lawyer has the full sense of the situation, as opposed to being, I'll use the word, sandbagged somewhere down the road if he or she is the lawyer that gets hired.
Okay. So basically what I want to do is this. You ready? I'm going to render my decision.
I'm always ready.
I'm going to render my decision.
For anything.
What I'm going to say is I will adopt every statement you made into my decision. I'm going to say, here we go, repeat the walk away. Be honest with yourself, recognize when a situation is almost beyond repair or beyond repair. Stay ahead of the curve. Preventative, prevent. The old adage of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Correct.
And finally, get yourself ready. Full and accurate disclosure, so you know exactly what an asset is, what they are, what the value of that asset is, bank accounts, statements, how much money is it on at a certain period of time.
Your Honor?
Yes?
May I amend the last statement?
Yes, please.
Say full, accurate, and complete disclosure.
And complete disclosure. Because again, when you have a bank statement, or even if you have an appraisal, for example, for a piece of property that maybe you just refinanced, you will know that as of that date, that was the value of the
Correct.
property, and it was not encumbered by mortgages, for example.
Correct.
So that would be the final one.
You've moved in the correct direction.
All right.
I endorse your decision.
Now we're going to talk about something very similar to divorce. Baseball.
Baseball.
Baseball. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition a little bit. We all know, and I'm going to keep you here, Steve, because I know you are such a sports buff.
I don't know anything about sports.
We're going to talk. We're going to have a sports court.
Baseball, that's what they throw the ball down the field and
That's
they
that one.
catch it?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Buff.
Well, with the next thing on the calendar, next matter, on the calendar, is something that we've been hearing a lot about in the news. We've heard all about A-Rod, we've heard about drug testing, and we've heard all about the controversy with the arbitration, suspensions. So we're going to talk about that a little bit right now. So joining me right now is our next guest, who is a physiatrist. He is a physician who is board certified in physical medicine and rehabilitation. And he graduated from New York Medical College. And he is also board certified with physical medicine and rehabilitation.
I'm also the chairman of the Department of Rehabilitation.
And he's the chair.
At St. Catherine's Hospital, which is right down the road.
Our guest today is Dr. Mark Sterling. Mark Sterling, okay, yes. We have our bailiff, our beautiful bailiff,
Wait,
Stephanie,
you
is
have
going
to
to
do this the
swear
right
you
way.
in.
Dr. Sterling, raise your right hand.
I object.
You have to make. Do you promise to do all the things that I asked him to do?
Funny and informative.
All righty, so gentlemen, come on over. Let's see, we're good. I think we have everyone here. All right. So first thing, we've heard about A-Rod. We've heard about the collective bargaining agreements. Now, it's my understanding that just last Saturday, which was the 11th of January, there was a decision that came down from the arbitrator, Frederick Horowitz, with MLB. And what he did was he essentially upheld the decision of Bud Selig, who is the commissioner of, not football, baseball. And I'm not that well versed in sports, so this is big for me. You guys are going to be doing most of the talking here.
Going head to head.
But suffice it to say that the commissioner actually suspended A-Rod for 211 games, and that was reduced to 162 games.
Plus postseason.
Plus postseason, correct.
And spring training.
That is correct, thank you. And what happened was that this was a big controversy as well, and we'll talk about all of this, is that there are two documents at issue here. One of them is called the Basic Agreement, the MLB Basic Agreement, and that's kind of the global, I guess, contract with all MLB players. Then there's an appendix that's called the Joint Drug Agreement, how appropriate, and it's an appendix to the Basic Agreement.
Basic agreement being collective bargaining agreement.
Correct, which people do refer to that as that, but I'm trying to simplify it here. Now, what's ironic is that the Joint Drug Agreement, which is the appendix, for the most part focuses predominantly on drug testing and what happens if someone tests positive in a drug test, as opposed to there just being something that a player does and they find just cause that he did something that was inappropriate in baseball in general. Now that's the hook that they caught A-Rod. It's kind of like Al Capone, tax evasion. They didn't get him on murder. So he never tested positive on any drug tests. And they cumulatively gave him a penalty based upon each incident. So under the Joint Drug Agreement and also under the Basic Agreement or the Collective Bargaining Agreement. That's why the numbers were cumulative. Your thoughts, gentlemen. Let's start with Dr. Mark Sterling. And what exactly is a performance-enhancing drug? And tell us maybe you can enlighten us on that point.
Any substance that you take that would be used to enhance your performance. At this point, we're talking about growth hormones, steroids, anabolic steroids, not the kind that you take when you get poison ivy, testosterone,
Right.
all those.
What's IGF-1?
Insulin growth factor 1
Yeah, that
is
was
one of the growth factors that is used to promote anabolic growth in the human body. It's a natural substance. but now we're able to synthesize it in the laboratory, and as such, it's used to stimulate growth in much the same way that
HGH works.
right, HGH, human growth hormone, increases lean body mass. It stimulates growth and cell reproduction and regeneration.
Right.
So insulin growth factor it's a secondary substance now that's being used to, again, be anabolic and cause bigger, stronger, leaner athletes.
If you were to give us one or two sentences on how exactly does that work, what does it do to your body to make you stronger and faster and perform better?
In the same way you look at a young boy versus a boy who's going through adolescence. A young male child who's not going to have the testosterone levels, and he looks like a boy. And then when you start adding muscle mass, when you're going through adolescence, you'll start adding muscle mass and lean muscle mass and tissue.
Well, it's my understanding that some of these drugs that A-Rod could have been actually taking, for example, the gummy bears or the gummies, right?
Right.
He would eat them, they would go into his system, and
Bloodstream.
what is it?
Bloodstream.
Into his bloodstream, yes. And by the 9th inning, they would be gone. So even if he was tested, it would not come up positive.
There's a lot of information which still has not come out. The half-life of human growth hormone is 20 to 30 minutes, which means if you took, right now, by the time this webcast is over, most of it has been gone from your bloodstream.
Oh, really?
And a lot of these things cannot be ingested orally because that's why they have to inject the growth factor and inject steroids because you put it into your mouth and it gets broken down in your stomach. So you can't take it that way. That's why this Bosch character said that he was injecting A-Rod personally.
Well, see, Steve, I know you're very well versed in this topic, Mr. Baseball. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, as far as what happened, the testimony that Bosch gave from Biogenesis in Miami, that basically he was meeting him in bathrooms, he was paying him, what, $12,000 a month to give him special types of peds and stuff, right?
Well, you see, the A-Rod story goes back much longer than this incident. First of all, he was, when he came up to Major League Baseball at the age of 18 or 19, playing for the Seattle Mariners as a shortstop, one of the best, if not the best shortstops who ever came up. And no one believed at the time, and there was no controversy at that time, almost 19 or 20 years ago, about any of the PEDs. It just didn't discuss it. The fact of the matter is that when he left Seattle and went to Texas, and then went from Texas to the Yankees, everything changed. And the pressure on someone such as Alex Rodriguez, who signed a $250 million contract, then another one, and then another one, mounted. And when it mounts, and there's a fear factor. The fear factor is, as good as I am, will I be able to continue to be as good as I am? And depending upon the person, they begin to or consider whether or not they should rely upon performance enhancement type drugs. Much like if you go to the bodybuilding industry, which I was involved with for over 20 years, and you go to the shows and you see guys like Ronnie Coleman or Lee Haney, who are huge. It's hard to believe or defies imagination, if you will, when you pick up any of the magazines, that anybody going to a gym could actually attain that type of physicality. Now, with the PEDs, it's not only the testosterone, but it's the mental acuity and the ability to focus better than if you weren't taking the PEDs and the human growth hormones. There was a whole row, if you will, about, and I'm sure you remember, about Andy Pettit, because he took HGH when he was hurt, and he said, well, I didn't take it to enhance my performance, I wanted to heal.
Right.
Okay, well, there's a whole row about that, or row about that, if you will. The whole incident or consideration with A-Rod is cumulative. It's not just this incident. So he's being punished or penalized, not just for this, and there are more elements to taking or not taking the PEDs than should he be punished for that. It's for a long, long history of what he did or didn't do.
Right.
But he's never had a positive drug test.
That's a fair statement.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, he's being railroaded. There is no justice. Earlier you told us about your urges
my hammer.
or urgencies, or something about urges. But yeah, I still think that legally he has a very strong case that he was not in a court of law. The arbitrator that he was facing was employed by Major League Baseball in the same way that commissioner is employed by Major League Baseball. He's not independent of Major League Baseball. So,
Counselor, your rebuttal.
Well, Tacopina, who is the
Joe Tacopina.
right, the leading lawyer for A-Rod, along with co-counsel from Reed Smith, sort of took the same tact and the same argument. I can tell you from personal experience that when two parties sign an arbitration agreement, and in that arbitration agreement, it delegates full power to the arbitrator to make all decisions. You've sort of washed your hands of what elements of evidence you need to prove, how you can prove it, what you should do, and the arbitrator then has 100% carte blanche to agree with or not agree with whatever positions are advanced. Once that is then rendered by a decision rendered by that arbitrator, the federal courts and judges are somewhat loath to undermine or overturn what an arbitrator has decided. Now, we could debate till cows come home whether A-Rod took steroids or didn't take steroids. Certainly there was information leaked or given, and A-Rod himself said it, that his cousin gave him something and I didn't know it was steroids. But again, we could debate that till the cows come home. And as far as the legal positions are concerned, we could debate that as well. But the fact of the matter is, and it's been shown through evidence, and it's in the newspapers, that A-Rod sought to cover up
Exactly.
information. Generally, when someone seeks to cover up or hide information, there's a reason for it. I don't know what the reason is. I didn't speak to him. But I would suggest to you that if he's looking to cover up something, there's something to cover up, which then goes down the long road of he didn't do what he should do and sought an advantage that he shouldn't have sought and is being punished for all of these incidences, not just the one.
So I believe that the cover-up, or part of the cover-up, were BlackBerry texts, correct, that he was trying to
Yes.
delete? But of course, it's on the other side, so you have Bosch that has his. There were documents that were potentially
But
being
he tried to buy
destroyed.
Bosh.
Right,
He wanted to send them
exactly.
to Colombia.
That's right.
So instead,
So
Major
it's
League
said.
Baseball
So-
bought
right.
Bosch.
Yes, that's correct. I agree with you. Major League Baseball did buy Bosch. 100%.
Well, what's
Well, at least that's what. At
And
least that's
Bosch
what-
is going to go to jail for his crimes.
Well, I don't know the answer to
well,
that.
we don't.
I
I don't
don't
know
know-
about
I
that
don't-
either. I don't
we'll
know
see,
what's
but he
happening.
will.
But you know, what's ironic here is that we're talking about drug testing, right? Drugs, and that there was no finding. There was clear and convincing evidence, and this was directly from the decision, that basically they suspended A-Rod Rodriguez for like we said, the season because he violated the joint drug agreement by the use and possession of those pets, which that's the tough part I'm finding. I guess based upon just the testimony that we had of Bosch, one individual.
It's
Never
not a
any
court of law.
positive-
There's no cross-examination of the witnesses.
Well, but see, that's what Steve just says. It doesn't matter because you're in arbitration. When you
Unless,
sign that
but
contract,
but you
or
get
that
a federal
agreement-
injunction if there is evidence that the arbitration is
That
not.
was my next question.
Yeah,
What's,
well, in my opinion.
wait, they filed, or they were going to file, or they filed?
I don't know if they filed it yet. There's been
In-
news about it and
Federal
reporting
court,
about
correct?
it. And Tacopina has said we're going to do it.
What's the
I
standard?
haven't seen it.
What are they going to have to show that
I was
the
told it
arbitrator
was
did?
filed last month.
Arbitrary and capricious, what's the standard
Well,
to set aside an arbitrator's
bias.
award? Bias.
Bias. There are three grounds, but bias is the biggest ground. And there's case law dealing with the concept of bias, and you've really got to show it. And maybe they can and maybe they can't. I could suggest to you that if I were a federal court judge, which I'm not, and
Never will be. No.
probably I'm not good enough to be, or maybe I am, I don't know.
Oh, you are.
Okay? As a federal court judge, I would not overturn the arbitrator's decision, whether it's right or it's wrong, because I haven't read anything that would persuade me that there was bias such that it's a wrong decision.
Even if one of the people on the three-person panel was employed by Major League Baseball and was testifying against Alex Rodriguez.
Well, I give a direct answer to that. Okay?
Please.
Yeah, yes, a very direct answer. In Judaism,
This is a direct answer.
This is a direct answer. In Judaism, there's a concept called a beth din or a bet din, which is a religious arbitration. And typically in those arbitrations, you have an arbitrator who is the arbitrator hired by one party, another arbitrator who's hired by the other party, and a third arbitrator that the two arbitrators pick. The parties have no right to approve or disapprove that third arbitrator, and they render decisions all the time.
What happened in our case here? Because we have to wrap this up.
I
gee.
promise.
Okay.
Okay, not a problem. So you've got a situation where in those Beth Dins, and they come down with a decision, they then seek, or the person who doesn't get the right decision, seeks to overturn it. Federal court judges do not overturn those decisions.
They don't.
As a general rule. I'm not saying they don't, but it's a general rule. So while you may be correct that there may have been an abuse
Or
of
bias.
Or bias.
I don't know that there's bias. There may have been an abuse. I can't establish bias in my mind from what I've read. There may have been an abuse, but you've got a decision. And no one else has appealed the decision of Selig or Horowitz.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up because
Okay.
several baseball players said if they know now what they knew before, they would never have agreed to baseball's terms.
And if I knew
Well-
now, if I knew before when I was 20 what I know now when I'm almost 67, I probably would live my life a little differently. So,
Right.
20/20 hindsight is a great thing.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is they went into it willingly and they agreed to it and they said, I'm done, I agree.
Right. Well, let me go to Dr. Mark Sterling. Your two-sentence closing. What would you like to say? What do you think?
I think A-Rod's being railroaded, and Shakespeare had it right. Kill all the lawyers.
All right.
So my two-sentence
Mr.
closing
Stern.
is, do you have a gun? So I wouldn't have to have him kill me so he wouldn't go to jail. I would kill myself. Not a problem.
Oh boy. Well, this time just went by so quickly. I would love to have you back. Maybe we'll do a part 2 when the next appeal happens or something comes along where we hear more about A-Rod or drug testing or something along those lines.
Just don't let him come with a gun.
No.
Now, Dr. Mark Sterling, if someone needs to get in touch with you, you work at?
St. Catherine's Hospital. I'm on North Shore Orthopedic Surgery's
Right.
website. I'm one of the doctors that have been there 14 years.
Rehabilitation, physical medicine?
I'm an interventional physiatrist. I do mostly neck and back pain.
Okay. Mr. Stern?
I would like to endorse St. Catherine's Hospital because when I had a heart attack, that's where I was brought, and I'm still here.
And you're still here.
Okay.
Bravo on that one.
So their emergency services are outrageous.
Well, you are the attorney extraordinaire next to me, and
Far
how
below
do people get in touch with you if they have questions or if
We
they
have
need
an office
to?
in Melville on 445 Broad Hollow Road. Telephone number is 631-393-2600. You can contact us by email at srstern@ster.com, and we have a website. And if you've got a problem, come to me, and if I can't deal with it, I'll tell you where to go.
There you go. All right. Well, I think here we go. I think it's time to say goodbye. I think that's it on the calendar, right?
Ho-ho.
The Everything Lydia show is adjourned until next Monday at 3:30 p.m. right here on the Daily Blue. And of course, if you have a legal question, please go online to asklydiathelawyer.com. And if there's any part of the show that you might have missed, we welcome you to go to YouTube at everythinglydia.com or to the Daily Blue channel. And everyone, remember to live your life, check your ordinary at the door, don't be ordinary, and go live that remarkable life. And we'll see ya.